Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I'd like to call to order our Middlesex County Council meeting for Tuesday, October 27th. So this may be a week late, but I felt that it was important to acknowledge that last week was Local Government Week. How fortunate are we all, staff and elected officials alike, to work for community as we do. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank our staff for the work you do for Middlesex County. This year, well, it's been quite a year, as been said numerous times. As I have acknowledged many times, you have all risen to the challenges that you have faced. You have adapted to new work and safety protocols, to new workspaces, and all that seemed to change on a daily basis during the early days of pandemic living. You've adapted, and all the while keeping the business of the county going. So thank you very much. To my colleagues around the Horseshoe, thank you for your representation. I know you love your personal communities, and I know you love the county. You approach every decision made in the best interest and with the vision of how to make Middlesex County better. Middlesex County and staff, you are incredible ambassadors for Middlesex County, and it is a pleasure and honor to work with all of you. So even though it's a week late, we can still celebrate Local Government Week and all the work that we are so privileged to do. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none, you have the minutes, or is there any, business arising from the minutes from October 13th? Okay, you've got the minutes in front of you, and if there's nothing to be amended, I would entertain a motion to approve them as presented. Councillor Richards and Councillor Brennan, or John, did you have your hand up? Or Councillor Mayhew? Councillor Mayhew. And all opposed? And those are carried. Okay, no deputations today. Any inquiries or notices of motion? Okay, moving on to reports and new business. I'm happy to welcome Mike Langevin, our Deputy Chief from MLPS, to give us the 2021 response time performance plan.
Madam Warden, can you hear me?
We can hear you, and we can certainly see you in that bright jacket.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to Council, presenting the response time 2021 response time plan, and seeking a recommendation that that County Council approve our response time plan and submission to the Ministry. As Council remember, in the fall every year, Middlesex Land Paramedic Service is required to provide the Ministry with a response time plan for the upcoming year. And that we would then come back to Council in the spring to report on the previous year's response times. Based upon the last few years in terms of our response times, our recommendation is to maintain the response times as they have been in the previous years. The last time we made a update to the response time plan was in 2016, where we increased our targets. And as Council can see in the report, we have been able to maintain consistent achievements with those response times. We continue to see small improvements in the areas of cardiac arrest, CTAS 1s and 5s. So Council, remember that CTAS 1s are our most critical patients and go out as cardiac arrests, and CTAS 5s being our least critical patients. Of note for Council, CTAS 2, which is a serious patient, We did see a slight decrease from last year into this year in response times. And again, we believe this is associated with dispatch, which we've discussed in the past. One of the challenges with CTAS is that CTAS is applied once we make patient contact. So it's not a dispatch code per se, but more of a code when you get there. So we attribute a lot of these longer response times to instances where we're dispatched out on a code 3, so a response without lights and sirens. But when we get there, we determine the patient needs a CTAS too, which can be quite appropriate. But obviously, when you're not going out lights and sirens, there's a bit of a longer response time. So all in all, to sum up, we remain consistent with our response times, and we recommend for council to endorse us maintaining that same time for 2021, and happy to take any questions from council if there are any. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thanks for that. Any comments or questions from council? Councillor Vander Hayden.
First of all, thank you for the report. It's always interesting to read, and I guess it's not really a question, it's more a comment. I just want to thank you for always enlightening us on what's going on, and I know that's probably part of your job, but you make us really proud of what we're doing with Middlesex London paramedics, and you guys do a great job. You men and women do a great job for us, so thank you for that. And I think that that's just all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Councillor Vander Hayden, and I would think that we all echo those sentiments. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, through you, Madam Warden, to the Deputy Chief. Obviously, with the aging population, you're probably seeing more code 1 and 2 calls, or more serious calls. You're still able to maintain the timelines. How much of a percentage of an increase on these more serious calls are you seeing?
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Warden to you. We have seen slight increases from the CTAS. So again, this is the assignment once we make patient contact. We do year over year see increases in terms of our code 4 responses. So that's the code that determines our response. So just to make things more confusing, the higher the number going out, the more serious; the lower the number going back, the more serious. So we do see our code 4 responses continue to trend up. To your point, so we continue to respond to more and more determined sick patients every year. I'd have to get back to you on the exact percentage increases. I don't have them offhand, but we did provide them in our annual report, which you can see as well. But in terms of our year-over-year achievements from our CTAS responses, we are within the 1 percentage point typically of our previous years. So like I said, we're quite consistent. We're talking, in the neighborhood of 1, maybe 1.5% in terms of variation year over year. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thanks for that. Good, thanks for that, Councillor Brennan. Any other questions or comments with regards to this report? Okay, if there's none, then there is a recommendation in front of you, and I'd be happy to ask for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Warwick and Councillor DeVitt, all opposed, and that's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks for that, Mike. Okay, moving on, SCORE EDC SCT Association, the MOU request, and of course this is a follow-up from the last meeting. Morgan, did you want to walk us through this one?
Sure, thank you, Madam Warden, and through you to council. As you know, transportation has been a long-standing conversation in rural Ontario. As services have retrenched into larger urban centers, it has created a gap in accessible services to rural and small urban communities. In 2018, the province announced its community transportation grant program that has provided a number of municipalities the ability to connect their rural or small urban communities to larger centers. These connections are vital to quality of life and help to remove barriers that make it difficult for some Ontarians to reach jobs and participate in the community and access healthcare and specialized medical services. education and training, social services and programs, urban transit, and other rail, air, or bus services. County staff, with the strong support of the Warden, Thames Centre Mayor Warwick, and Deputy Mayor Elliott, have been collaborating with a number of municipal partners in Oxford and Middlesex to develop a transit service which has been largely informed through community and business engagement. In regard to the SCT Association MOU, Middlesex County staff have contributed largely to the development of the MOU under a regional collaboration perspective that, if endorsed, would allow for the county to participate in an association aimed at information sharing, cooperative procurement opportunities, advocating on behalf of a sustainable community transportation system, and to consider ways for seamless integration of transit systems in an effort to enhance ridership experience. The association is not meant to drive local decision-making, but to complement it through collaborative discussion, advice, and recommendations on things like service policies, fare schedules, or other factors relating to a sustainable and highly functioning regional transit system. As well, if council endorses the MOU, it will be doing so as a delivery agent of a community transportation service and not on behalf of or to affect other community transportation services in Middlesex County. At this time, happy to take any questions or comments from council. Otherwise, I'd kindly like to recommend that county council participate in the SCT Association by endorsing the attached MOU. Back to you.
Great. Thanks for that, Morgan. Any questions or comments? Councillor Warwick.
Yes, I just want just a comment. I just wanted to let council know that yesterday the Office of the Honourable Rob Black, Senator for Ontario, reached out to me asking for comments about our rural transportation. So I'm going to be very pleased to be able to talk to him about the coordination that we have with our neighboring counties and the partners that we have in this, because I think rural transportation is only going to work if we have a good working relationship with our neighbors. And I think most people that were raised in the country know the importance of neighbors. And it'll be a great conversation that I'm looking forward to having with him.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Allison. Any other questions, comments with regards to this? I think a lot of the discussion we had at our last meeting, I don't think there should be too much. Okay, with not seeing anything else, a mover and seconder for the recommendation in front of you would be great. Councillor Elliott and Councillor Warwick. All opposed? And that's carried. That's great. Thank you very much. Chris, Hay Communications Municipal Access Agreement.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Fairly straightforward. As you know, we have a number of smaller telecommunication companies operating in the county, and we are trying to create a level playing field for everyone for the installation of high-speed internet infrastructure across the county. So Hay Communications is operating, or is actually already installed some infrastructure in the northwest part of the county, up near the Huron County boundary. So this is a municipal access agreement that would give them the ability to install infrastructure really anywhere in the county under a certain set of rules and conditions. This is very similar to other agreements we have in place with our telecommunications companies. I just wanted to give my thanks to Wayne and the legal team for putting this together. And unless there's any questions, I'd be leave it with you with that recommendation.
That's great. Thank you very much, Chris. Councillor Vander Hayden.
Thank you for that. I have no issue with this. I mean, we have them all over the county, and I know North Frontenac has them too. My only question is, so they're county road allowances, so the county will know about it. Do they also let the municipality know when they're coming to their, because, you know, there's a very slim margin between where the road ends and where the sidewalk starts. And so we need to know when these are coming to town.
Yeah, through the ward, Councillor Vander Hayden. And this one particularly is very rural. So they're not really actually even going into Park Hill. They're staying further to the north. So they're servicing homes that really would have no alternative access to broadband. So homes along rural stretches of road. We're looking on County Road 5, so Mount Carmel Drive and McGilvery Drive, those types of roads. But we know, working previously with NFTC when they came into Mount Bridges, we had a collaborative working relationship with them and the municipality. So anytime we're in an urban area, we definitely bring in the local municipal officials, because there are two different jurisdictions, and it's helpful to these size of operators because sometimes they don't know who to talk to. So they're always very thankful have one point of contact and we bring everyone to the table at one time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Chris, because I think it's really important. We all know how important this is, and we need to get every gap filled. And I think some of these smaller organizations work really, really well. I mean, the warden can talk about Quattro and what a great job that they've done in their community. So yeah, I'm totally in favor. I just thank you for that answer.
Great. Thanks very much for that, Councillor Vanderheyden. Any other questions on this? Okay, seeing none, I would ask for a mover and seconder for the recommendation. Councillor Vanderheyden and a seconder, Councillor Smith. All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Next report in front of you is actually one from me. And as you can read by the report that I submitted, on October 2nd this past year, women mayors and deputy mayors throughout Ontario were invited via Zoom to join Her Honour Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dodswell for a conversation. This was a follow-up from an in-person event Her Honour hosted last year that many of us were able to attend. Topics covered were the effects of the pandemic on women's return to the workforce, as well as conversations regarding local concerns for women all over Ontario. And we know from many media stories and social agency reports and industry discussions that the COVID-19 pandemic that was declared earlier this year has had an unprecedented impact in Canada and around the world, including intensifying inequalities related to gender and other factors, such as economic status, race, and culture. After our October 2nd event, my female colleagues and I were inspired to reflect on our roles and how this conversation could be kept going in Middlesex and in our respective communities. With this in mind, the idea of a Women's Caucus of Middlesex County Council was born. This caucus would give the women of council an opportunity to continue the discussion we started with the Lieutenant Governor, with women across the county. The discussions would focus on improving access to information, determining local needs, and identifying opportunities for COVID-19 recovery. It would allow us to advocate for women in rural and small urban areas of the county by making advisory recommendations to County Council. While the focus at the outset of formation is the intensified impact of the pandemic on women, it would be my hope that as we eventually find ourselves no longer in a pandemic, this advocacy work would continue. Through our strategic plan process earlier this year, it was evident that we want to continue to be progressive and a partner in those within our community. This caucus would strengthen those priorities, allowing us to focus and broaden the voices heard by County Council on important issues. It is, with great respect for all members around our council horseshoe, that I bring forth this recommendation to create a Women's Caucus of Middlesex County Council. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that might be on the floor. Any questions or comments? Councillor Vanderheyden.
Well, I was looking to see if there's any other hands up first, but I guess I'll go first. I'm really excited about this. I think this is something that we've been waiting to do for a while, and this is an opportune time for us to support people in our communities through a different venue or avenue, whichever you want to call it. But I just wanted to highlight something that you said there, Madam Warden, and that is that we can't do this without the support of our male colleagues. We need your support to do this. We need your support to bring us issues and to be along for the ride with the dialogue. And I highly encourage everyone to understand that this is something that County Council is doing. We're just a mere caucus of the county to organize and move things forward. And I just really wanted to stress that one more time, because we have that conversation between my female colleagues. And I think that's important for you to know, because we're all in this together, and everything that the people in our communities experience is something that we all need to work on together for those issues. So I just really wanted to highlight that, and thank you all for this ability to have the conversation.
Thanks for that, Councillor Vanderheyden. Any other comments or questions from anybody? Councillor Smith.
Thank you. And through the warden, just I think this is a great idea, just to echo Councillor Vanderhaven's comments. And I was happy to read this report. And I know that we had a conversation beforehand, warden. And the one comment that I have is can this be broadened beyond just county council? I have three amazing female council members on my council, my deputy mayor and two councillors. And I was just wondering how they could be included in this caucus if that would be allowed.
So we're in the process of developing all the terms of reference and what the bylaw would look like, because if you approve this resolution, then staff would bring back a bylaw to confirm it next meeting. And I guess maybe I might look either to Wayne or to Cindy to kind of answer that, because that is what we have talked about, is how we can either include other members from the lower tiers or even from outside county council.
So just one comment before whoever takes that, because I think right now, if it's just looking strictly at county council, then I think we have the whole west side of the Middlesex, which is kind of not there, but there is women on council in Southwest Middlesex, North Middlesex, Adelaide, Metcalfe, and Newberry. So we got to connect them all in if we're able to.
Yeah, we don't want it to turn into a west side story, the east side versus the west side, do we? No, and that is something that the five of us have been talking about as to how we can hear those voices and have them be part of this. So Wayne, I don't know, you've got your mic off, so.
No, I think you should be able to hear me. Yep. Through you, Madam Warden, to council. To answer that question, it totally is up to you. So in terms of when we're creating this body, it's going to be an advisory committee to council. It can be made up of the number of members that you would like. I'd suggest anything no smaller than 3. So minimum 3, but it can be as large as you like. And then in terms of who makes up the council, it could be upper tier councillors, lower tier councillors, members of the general public who you think it would be important to have on the committee, could be academics. It totally is up to you. So I think council will have to think about, does it want to do a rotation of certain local councillors, or how is it going to accommodate everybody in terms of and keep it a size that's workable as well. So it really, all options are open to council, and so you can certainly think about all those things. And we're happy to take direction on that and make it happen.
I might share with you a conversation that we had when we were coming up with this report, and I would maybe ask your indulgence in looking at the recommendations that is there now to get at least the 5 of us going and getting this working. We are planning, should this all go ahead and you approve this, we are planning to have a Zoom event in November where members of local councils, various social groups, women in Middlesex County will be invited to get this conversation going. And perhaps maybe after that, we would have a clearer idea of maybe those that might be interested in joining at that point. Is that okay, Councillor Smith, or did you have any follow-up after that?
No, that's everything, Kate. Thank you so much.
Okay, Councillor Mayhew.
Thank you very much, Madam Warden. Through you, I think your timing is very good, Madam Warden. As we all realize, women carry much of the responsibilities around the household. And with so many women working from home, looking after children who at times are not in school, as long as the many other duties they perform aside from their professional duties, there is burnout. And I think to look at that situation and to address that situation, I think this would be good governance to have a body that sympathizes with that sector and can enhance our governance and how we can help them. So I'm extremely supportive of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, then I would ask for a mover and seconder for the recommendation in front of you. Councillor Mayhew and Councillor Smith. All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Councillor comments and other business. Councillor Cornelissen.
Thank you, Madam Warden. To members of council, I just wanted to share with you that the Rural Education Task Force has resumed meeting on a virtual format. We've had a meeting and we made some recommendations to the Board of Education. Originally, the task force was to conclude by the end of this year, but that will now be extended to November of 21. There are 4 other recommendations made to the board that the board has endorsed. Chair Morrell will be bringing them to the 3 respective counties, looking for county council's support, and they'll be coming in the near future.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that update. Councillor Cornelissen, did anybody have any questions on that? Okay, seeing none. Any other councillor comments? Councillor Vanderheyden.
I'm going to bring it up here, but it has to do with a couple of reports that are before us, and one is the speed limit bylaw, and one is in communications. I had a letter email from one of our residents in Strathroy-Caradoc, Southwest Middlesex. I want to cross the 2 over because it was right on the border there, and it has to do with the rumble strips and the fact that I feel they have a lack of quality of life because of those strips in front of their home. So I'm just bringing that forward right now, just to highlight that I got that information. So we will have to have that conversation. And I'm not sure if Mr. Trainee has that email. I believe he does. If he doesn't, I will forward it. And then we can have that conversation, whether it's in one of the other reports or whether it's at another date. But it's one of those things that we want safety, but we also want people to have quality of life. So just throwing that out there.
Thank you for that. Councillor Smith.
Just since Councillor Vanderheyden mentioned it, I also received that email as well from the resident in Southwest Middlesex or Strathroy-Caradoc. I didn't get the map to figure out where they were, but I mentioned that I was going to bring that forward during correspondence item number 7, just because it's very similar in nature. So that's where I'll express some of the comments there.
Great, thank you for that. Councillor Mayhew.
Yes, thank you much, Madam Warden, through you. Of course, being mayor of Southwest Middlesex, I have received communications to this very same topic in the past. And the answer that I give, I feel somewhat uncomfortable stating that as we sand the roads and we plow the roads, the intensity of that rumble strip will eventually fade. And I just don't feel entirely comfortable giving that answer. So I appreciate the subject being addressed and that the discussions can resume. And I look forward perhaps getting an update sometime, even if it's a meeting with Mr. Trainee, Councillor Vanderheyden and myself, just to open a dialogue to see if we can enhance safety at the same time, retain some order of peace as these people live in their home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Any other councillor comments? Maybe I will take this opportunity to officially congratulate Councillor Vanderheyden and Councillor Elliott on their elections and their positions with FCM. I think when we met last time, I think it was unofficial, but now it is official and we're able to share that. So congratulations, certainly to Councillor Elliott. This is a new undertaking for you and we're very supportive of that. But I know with all due respect for Councillor Vanderheyden, this is an exciting journey for you. We know what typically what the next step will be, and we're excited to be behind you and to support you, and glad that you have we are able to have such representation on FCM. So congratulations. Yes, virtual clap. Okay, moving on. If there aren't any other comments, then on to bylaws. And Chris, I'll hand it over to you.
Madam Warden, we have 3 bylaws today. First is a bylaw to authorize the warden and clerk to execute a telecommunications municipal access agreement between the Corporation of the County of Middlesex and Hay Communications. We have a bylaw to authorize and approve a memorandum of understanding for the establishment of the Southwest Community Transit Association to set forth the terms and understanding for the coordination of the integrated delivery of inter-community public transportation services, and to authorize the warden and the clerk to execute the memorandum of understanding. And we have a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the County of Middlesex, October 27th, 2020.
Thank you for that, Chris. Can I get a mover and seconder for the first and second reading, please? Councillor Ropp and Councillor Cornelius. All opposed? And that's carried. And for the third and final reading, Councillor Richards and seconder, Councillor Elliott. All opposed? And that's carried. Okay, moving into the Committee of the Whole. Today we've got Mark Brown with us, the County Forestry Officer and Weed Inspector, to give us an update for 2019-2020. Mark, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Through your worship to councillors and colleagues I see here on the meeting. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide an update on forestry activities, forestry department activities. I believe IT Morgan's going to help me out here with slides and moving those forward because I don't have the access to do that. Anyhow, so yeah, I'll just quick summary, do a little bit on county forestry management, the Woodlands Conservation Bylaw, Weed Control Act, and the support services that Forestry Department provide. And of course, I kind of refer to this as the Forestry Department as Mark's World, but of course it isn't Mark's World. It's with great thanks to Teresa Hill, admin support, Alex and the GIS department, the IT department I've already mentioned, work very closely with the roads and transportation staff at the county, and of course HR in this difficult year have been helping out with providing safe working environment for me to be out and about. I mean, I guess I probably have the best of all worlds with being an outside employee, but certainly, yeah, masks and hand sanitizer and gloves and all that kind of stuff that we need to carry on our duties as normal this year. So thanks to everybody for helping and supporting me, and of course Dirk van der Werf for his help and guidance and overall leadership. Next slide, please. Oh, we're scrolling. So, oh, I'm not sure. We're on slide 3, are we? Okay, so yeah, county forestry management. Last winter, we completed some select harvests in a couple of the county woodlots, the Clark and the Robinson tract. We also completed an ash salvage, so we're just trying to salvage some merchantable timber from the emerald ash borer affected trees in the McMaster and the Bain tracts in Skunks Misery. And I also spent some enjoyable hours out there in the field and marking some select harvest in Moor and Bay tracts. Those are both hardwood, deciduous hardwood markings for a select harvest, quite light. And in the Patterson and Purdy tract, I've gone ahead and marked some conifer plantations, stands for marking for thinning, and gradually converting some of these areas back to the native hardwood stands because the pines are being outcompeted by the native hardwoods, and there doesn't seem a whole lot of business sense or economic sense in trying to fight it. So we may as well go back to native Carolinian hardwood stands in those certain areas that we've identified. So of course, that was a little bit truncated, the proceeding with those harvesting projects was a little bit truncated with COVID-19, but we managed to have a couple of virtual meetings. I walked a couple of contractors through the marked plantations on my iPhone and doing a little bit of FaceTime. So that was useful, and that gave them a flavor of what's coming up for tender. So that's just a little overview on the harvesting side. Next slide, please. So public use in the county forests, I think we've definitely seen an increase in public use this year. I mean, I don't have stats to support that, but I've certainly seen quite a lot more activity, and think people are trying to get out and recreate. Probably a little bit of relief from the COVID-19 lockdown in the spring, early summer. So quite a bit of trail use, mountain biking, horseback riding, trail hiking and stuff with families. There's definitely the hunting season was very active, and it looks like it's possibly going to be even more active this winter. Certainly had a lot of inquiries, so I don't know if some people are looking for new hobbies or outlets or recreational activities. There's certainly been a continued amount of demand for garbage cleanup, and we've continued to install some barriers where people were backing their trucks in and dumping the garbage. I know things are difficult this year, but there's really no excuse for doing that. But anyhow, we deal with it. And Hydro One have installed, I don't know if you've been out to the Banks Tract on Elgin, but they've installed a new barrier fencing across the big tower line there. All that land is owned by the county between the two tracts of forest on the Bank Tract, which are on either side of the right-of-way. I don't know if you recall, but they did some vegetation management along that right-of-way, and they're going to be doing some, that was in preparation for some tower line maintenance. They're doing a big project this year, I think, for upgrading and maintaining the towers. So to prevent unwanted access and vehicular access and ATVs and snowmobiles, we had them put up a barrier fencing across there and pedestrian gates so that people can still enjoy the trails in the Banks Tract. Next slide, please. So during COVID-19, as I mentioned, hunting and trail use were kept open, whereas quite a few of my colleagues across Ontario, across the province, were either considering or actually implemented trail closures. I think it was an uncertain time at the beginning of COVID-19, whether this was a good idea or a bad idea. We considered whether the closures might be beneficial or not. And on the balance of our experience and thoughts, we decided to keep everything open for hunting and trail use, and allow people that recreational and outdoor opportunity if they don't live on a rural property where they can recreate on their own property. It's important for them to get outdoors and enjoy a little bit of nature. And we did receive thanks from the conservation officer, Melanie, for keeping the forests open to hunting and recreation, because we got quite a bit more pressure on our trails and our county woodlots because surrounding jurisdictions were closing their trails. So a little bit of kudos for, I think the county made the right decision, and yeah, we didn't really have any bad outcomes from that. So I think it was all good, win-win. Next slide, please. And you can skip this one. So next, just segue into the Woodlands Conservation Bylaw. So a little bit of an annual summary here. Just about 1.8 million board feet of timber was harvested. Sorry, a little dyslexic there. 1.8 million board feet of harvest, and giving you a little bit of a summary, about half of that was hard maple and soft maple, walnut. Walnuts, the prices for walnut at the moment are through the roof, so we're seeing quite a bit of walnut harvest carrying on in the county. And they're just rough the distribution of where the harvesting activities were occurring. You can see probably, well, fairly evenly distributed, but certainly quite a bit in Strathroy, Caradoc, and over in Thames Centre and Southwest Middlesex. Definitely the hot spots. Next slide, please. So really for us, fortunately, when I joined the county in 2014, yes, 2014, we decided to really sort of follow a model of remote working right from the get-go, so that I wasn't coming and sitting in an office and you know, driving a desk. I was driving a truck and out there meeting landowners and being an ambassador for the Woodlands Conservation Bylaw and the harvesting activities and everything trees related. So so over the last few years, we have developed you know, the remote working systems, and IT and GIS have provided us with some great tools. So essentially, I get my task list downloaded thanks to Teresa. She translates all of the incoming faxes and emails and telephone calls into and develops my task list. And I see what my tasks are each day, and I can go out and visit landowners. Don't meet them in person anymore, but I call them and tell them I'm going to their property, and then I call them with the results, and we usually follow up in writing as well with that. And that's been wonderful. You know, my colleagues have done an awesome job in terms of supporting that system, and the landowners have been very understanding. So it's been great, and it's been pretty much business as usual for us. And there is a central database recording all of that, all of the work that we do in terms of weeds, conservation bylaw, you know, all of the invasive species and all that kind of stuff that we handle during the year. Next slide, please. So in terms of exemptions, we had a couple at the end of last year, and I think one just at the beginning of this year, 2020, that we took care of. We've got a couple more in the queue, but these are opportunities where landowners can apply for a county council exemption to clear small areas of woodland, either to rationalize their farming activities or to deal with a little bit of an awkward situation, or you know, a depleted woodland that's maybe not producing so much anymore, and they replant an equivalent area off to the side. So still working with landowners on that. Again, not meeting them in person, but going out, viewing it. I send them a draft map once I've GPSed the proposed area. Send them a draft map and ask them if they agree with that, and they agree or disagree. And we get it amended, and then eventually we bring it to council for their consideration for that. So next slide, please. So in terms of enforcement, I must say the landowners and logging industry has been largely very good complying with the rules and regulations. There's obviously a lot of work goes on in the background to ensure that that's going to happen in terms of education and outreach. So I speak to a lot of landowners and just explain how the bylaw works and all that sort of thing, what they can and can't do on their land. But unfortunately, one or two people do take it upon themselves to destroy woodlands without you know, getting the appropriate permits. So we've been working with legal staff, and we've dealt with those through prosecutions successfully. And yeah, and interestingly enough, I guess we're probably one of the most active in terms of bylaw enforcement across the province. And we were asked to present at the Ontario Professional Foresters Association workshop in January of this year before COVID. And was very well received, and our colleagues David Samuels and Wayne joined us at the training conference, and I think it was very well received from our colleagues from across the province. Next slide, please. 10 of 16. Weed Control Act. You can go to the next slide. Thanks, Morgan. So it has been a busy year. and last year as well. They both were challenging years. I don't know if council recall. Last year was seasonal weather was causing some issues in that a lot of the farmland was remaining very, very wet and wasn't planted till either very, very late on in the season or not planted at all. So that generated a high volume of complaints. And then this year we had a spring drought, if you recall, probably right down in the middle of the lockdown. But farmers were planting their crops, and then we were hit by quite a severe drought. And that meant that the weeds got off, because they don't seem to be affected by the drought quite so much as our crops. So the weeds got established, and then the crops came a little bit later. So that was definitely some challenging. We've satisfactorily resolved all of the complaints to date. We've got a couple that are just being dealt with right now. And then just happy to report that the trial Phragmites treatments that we carried out next to the county woodlots on Concession Drive near Newbury. We did a couple of trial plots, pilot projects spraying with herbicides, and those were very, very successful. And we'll be coming back to you with just a little brief update and report on that, and what can be done, and just to try and help spread the word, what can be done with that pesky weed in the fairly short period. We'll be coming with that with transportation. Next slide, please. Support services. As I think probably most of you know, I support, you can carry on to the next slide, Morgan. I support planning department and municipal tree issues in the local municipalities, regulatory compliance inspections. The picture on the right there is actually of a golf course expansion, although it kind of looks like a bomb's gone off on it. But anyhow, it looks pretty drastic right now. But that, well, when I took the photo, but I'm sure by now it looks like a splendid golf course with all sorts of golf course landscaping going on. So yeah, work on that with my colleagues and with the conservation authorities. And it's been a very, very busy year, but definitely the lead on a lot of those inquiries. Fielding quite a lot of calls. I don't know if that's because people are at home and noticing things that they maybe didn't notice when they were busy going back and forth to the office every day. But yeah, it's certainly seen an increase in the call numbers, but pretty much all satisfactorily resolved. And hopefully my elected officials haven't received any complaints on that front. Anyhow, also new to my role is because County Council is providing funding to the Clean Water Programme. Last year we met a couple of times as a committee. I'm the lead for the county, and we considered the applications. This year has been a little bit different. It didn't get off the ground as quickly, just with the remote working, and I think with the staff that lead this at Upper Thames finding some logistical issues. But we eventually had our meeting about a month ago. I think it was October, maybe September. Anyhow, a little while ago we had a first meeting via telephone conference. It wasn't a Zoom meeting. And we considered a whole bunch of applications that either have been backed up or just submitted this year. And happy to report on the tree front. I won't delve into the details of the erosion control and all that kind of stuff that Upper Thames deal with, because I'm sure they'll be coming with an annual report to you. But from a tree perspective, we're seeing this year and into next year, there'll be about 41 acres of fragile land that will be retired across the county. And as a result of that, about 6,600 trees will be planted. In addition to that, 3.9 kilometers or 3,900 meters of new windbreaks will be planted this year. And that amounts to about 2,400 trees. to be planted. So we're seeing some additional tree planting, which is really, really good news, and it means that that program is doing its job, and it's good that County Council are supporting that financially. So the total costs of just the woodlands, or what I would see regard as the woodlands or tree program, the total costs of those projects is about $92,000, and the clean water program contribution to that is $17,000. So that's a win-win. Next slide, please, Morgan. Invasive pests, I'm sure we're all aware of this little beast, the gypsy moth, caterpillars going up the tree there. This last couple of years has been challenging. So we've received an increasing number of inquiries and calls. Gypsy moth, tent caterpillar, oak wilt, Japanese beetle, and beech bark disease, to name but a few. I liaise with Natural Resources Canada, CFIA, and the provincial Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry on these issues. I do a little bit of beetle survey for them and insect surveys, and we're providing landowners with options, how they can implement and what they can do to resolve some of these issues on their land. And we're continuing to sort of update our web resources in that respect. And this winter we'll do a little video, appropriately socially distanced, but I'm going to get Teresa to video me doing an egg mass scraping and that sort of thing for the gypsy moth, so we can get that on the website so that people have a easy go-to DIY how to deal with your gypsy moth. Next slide, please. And that is the end. Excellent. 16 of 16. Thank you, Madam Warden. Thank you, councillors. Any questions?
That's great. Thank you very much, Mark. And, I'm up for almost anything and willing to support anything, but you are I can go ahead and do the DIY egg scraping or whatever it is all on your own, because I don't want any part of that. But anyways, thanks for that. That was very informative. I always appreciate when you're here. Councillor Warwick and then Councillor DeVete.
Yes. Make sure I'm muted. Thank you. And through the warden, Mark, that was a great presentation, and thanks for all the work that you do keeping those our forests safe and the advice that you give. I just know, like in our own banks tract, I quite often stop and take a look through there, and it's always pleasant to be able to walk through. I just was wondering about the hunting. How do you determine who hunts on those lands and who doesn't, knowing that the shotgun season for deers is starting next week? I imagine there is some type of system involved so people don't shoot each other in the woods.
Thank you, through Madam Warden to Councillor. That is actually administered first and foremost by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. They administer all of the hunting permits and the tags, etc., etc. I liaise very closely with Melanie just on enforcement issues and keeping an eye on the hunting activity, so that if people erect tree stands, that they take them down appropriately, they don't damage the trees, that they're in an appropriate location so that they're not firing across public roads or private property. The bank's tract, as I'm sure you know, is archery only. So it's there are no firearms allowed in the bank's tract. So, because of the proximity to the 401 and the 400 series highway and the parking lot. But yeah, it is MNRF take the lead on that, and they police that, and they have the records of who has permits, etc. But when I'm out and about, I tend to share details of who's where with Melanie, so that she can just keep an eye and tabs on things, so that everything's done safely and that there are not too many in one woodland at one time and all that sort of thing.
Good, thanks for that. Councillor DeVete.
Thank you, through to Mark. Thanks for the report, Mark. I was great to hear how you're working solo and refining your methods of remote working. That was good news. And it was also good news to hear about the public use, though saddened to hear about the garbage. I just want to let you know that I was going to ask you about Phragmites, and I know you're coming with a report. So that's the part that I'm interested in. I'm looking forward to hearing how that's going, and then ultimately how we're going to do a rollout or something so we can get all of this controlled over the counties. So thank you for that, and I'll look forward to more news from you soon.
Okay, Councillor Vander Hayden.
Thank you through the ward, and thank you again also, Mark, for that report. First of all, gypsy moths, I have to, true confessions, Ken and I have become gypsy moth murderers. We have mass murdered in our trees, numbers and numbers of them when they were caterpillars. I think my husband climbed more trees in the last month and a half than he has in his entire childhood, just trying to get rid of them from our property. They were just like everywhere. They were just falling out of trees. It was whatever. So thank you for that. What I really wanted to focus on, though, is not those little worms and spiders and things that come out of trees, but the fact that we are replanting trees, and it was like 6,600 plus the windrows, which is over 2,000. I think that's astounding and really necessary, because we do also harvest trees. So I always get comments from the public saying, what are you thinking letting all those trees leave? And I keep telling them that, you know, there comes a time when those trees have to, for the health of the forest, leave, and we also replant. So I'm really happy that I can now give them actual numbers of replants, and the more that we can replant, the better, because we only have one earth, and that trees make up our oxygen with our plants. And so I really want to thank you for that, because I always want to harp on that. That's so important. I don't mind a chair made out of wood, but I rather see 12 trees planted than have a seat. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Vander Hayden. Any other comments or questions for Mark at this time? Okay, seeing none. Thanks, Mark. That was great. And keep up the great work, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thank you all. Keep safe.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, moving on to action items. We've got a report from Dirk with regards to the exemption of a proposed plan of condominium. And Dirk, I will get you to speak to this.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And just by coincidence, we have two of them, and they're both Sifton properties. But the first one, I believe on the agenda is Middlesex Center.
Middlesex Center. Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay, make sure I got the right one. So this is an application for an exemption for a proposed plan of condominium. And Council probably won't remember, but a few years ago, you approved a plan of subdivision and included a number of blocks within it for townhouse development. And this is the first of those blocks for 26 townhouses to come forward. And really the exemption from the condominium process allows the development to proceed where it's appropriate, where there are no other outstanding matters. And really in this case, all of those matters were considered and dealt with as part of the underlying registration of the plan of subdivision. So I do think it's a good candidate for an exemption. It's consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms with the planning documents, and I am therefore recommending approval.
Hey, questions or clarification for Dirk on this report? Okay, seeing none, there is a recommendation in front of you, and I would entertain a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Brennan and Councillor DeVitt. All opposed, and that's carried. Okay, the next one for Strathroy.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So this is a property in Strathroy-Caradoc in Mount Bridges for, it's a 50-acre property roughly, and it, if approved, it would create 104 lots for single detached dwellings, as well as a number of blocks for future townhouse type developments like the last application. And then this particular property, there's a large wooded land, including wetlands to the middle of the property. So there are a number of blocks and setbacks and whatnot within the plan that address that natural heritage issue. Attached to the report is, there are a couple of planning reports authored by Tim Williams that were provided to Strathroy-Caradoc Council at the time. And that gets into, of course, the information in more detail. The subdivision was accepted as complete in June of 2019, and then There was a fairly lengthy process as the natural heritage issues were dealt with, and then as the plan also evolved through the public process. And so Strathroy Care Council did recommend approval of it at their October 5th, 2020 meeting. Agency ministry circulation was undertaken, and all matters either have been addressed or can be addressed as conditions of draft plan approval. And really, it's the municipality in the Lower Thames River Conservation Authority that had a few matters that need to be addressed as conditions on this one. So, as I said, the planning report does, Tim's planning report goes into a bit more detail. I've reviewed all that material through the process, and I am satisfied that it's consistent with the provincial policy statement, and it conforms with the county's official plan and also the Strathroy Care official plan. I'm therefore recommending approval.
Thank you, Dirk. Any comments, clarification, question on this one? Okay, seeing none, then you've got a motion in front of you, and I would look for a mover and seconder for this one. Councillor Richards, seconder, Councillor Smith, all opposed, and that's carried. Okay, Chris, speed limit bylaw update.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I'll just pull my report here. So as council knows, we do sort of an informal speed limit review once a year, sometimes twice, depending on the volume of requests. It turned out this year with COVID, I think people were seeing some more concerns with traffic speed. Anecdotally, and from the police, we're laying a few more charges with regards to speed racing. So front and center of everyone's mind right now is road safety and speed limits. So I have a list for you today, and they've been separated out in a couple of ways. One is near the end of the report, just minor boundary adjustments. And in these cases, there will be areas where a speed limit sign is right at the very, very limit of the development. A few houses have been built, and it needs to be pushed further away from the settlement area or the development area. And Lobo is a perfect example of that on County Road 22. We haven't touched that speed limit in decades. And certainly with the development of Dairy Lane and some developments further to the west, it was appropriate to move those speed limits out. And that's the same for all four of those that are listed near the end of the report. More specifically, at the beginning of the report, there's 3 specific areas that are identified. I should mention that these get collected from phone calls from the public or emails, communications with local public works officials, local elected officials, and the police especially. We work hand in hand with the police, and they have identified some changes in the past. There's none on this list this year, but that's where we get these requests, as well as us reviewing any areas where we're seeing growth. So County Road 20, Denfield Road, for a while, there's been houses built along the east side of the road. We're seeing some more development along the west side of the road. This has stretched the limits of Denfield Road to the south. Now, these are fairly large estate homes. So my recommendation is to drop the 70-kilometer-per-hour speed limit there to 60. Not appropriate to get all the way down to 50 in that area. Again, it's trying to set these speed limits to a rate that most drivers would seem to be reasonable, so we have good compliance with the posted speed limit. The second request we had was from the village of Bryanston, of course, Highbury Avenue, very busy, one of our busiest roads. And the request was to extend the 60-kilometer-per-hour speed limit zone all the way south to Ilderton Road. I felt that was likely not to see much compliance outside of the settlement area of Bryanston. So my recommendation is not to change that speed limit. The other one is sort of similar to that. That's on Haggerty Road, north of Newbury, where there's a challenge with the homeowner who's having people who are impatient when she's making a left-hand turn into her driveway. And there's certainly other ways, particularly we're looking at painting a double yellow line to help promote people not to pass in that area, but a lowered speed limit in that area is likely not going to address that concern. I'm not recommending that change either at this point. So those are the speed limit changes being recommended right now, and the speed limit bylaw is attached for your review. I've highlighted the areas where the changes have been made in that bylaw, and would be happy to answer any questions about the report.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. And are there any questions on this report? Councillor Vanderheyden.
Thank you very much, and thanks for that report, Chris. A couple of questions, and this pertains back to the question I had earlier. And I don't know if we need a report on this or if this is something that we can have a discussion about it at some point. And that's the speed limit. I know most of our major roads, like 81 Highway, are 90. Melbourne Road is 90. I'd like to know why maybe we need to change it to 80. What would effect would that have on our roads? Or counter to that, is there opportunity to change the speed limit coming up to intersections? And I would just use Melbourne Road as the example. That's an intersection that seems to give us a lot of grief. I drive that way so many times, and I don't understand why it's an issue, because it's clear every which way you look. However, that being said, there still seems to be, because they're both 90, that when the accidents happen, they're very significant and there's loss of life. So whether we then look at those intersections and say, okay, so far before the intersection, we change it to 70, and then that's already slowing people down, what difference that would make. So I don't need the answer today, but those are some of the thoughts that I was having as to how we can maybe start to slow the traffic down. So, I'm sure there's still going to be accidents. We all know that's going to happen, but maybe then we mitigate some of the really bad stuff from happening.
Through the word to Councillor Vanderheyden, I'll just give you some very general reports, but we can talk about that. I know I've had some questions about even the appropriateness of 50 km/h in our settlement areas, whether those are too high. I can tell you that the 90 km/h speed limit isn't unique to the Middlesex, of course. In fact, just recently, Chatham-Kent increased some of their speed limits on their 80s to 90s. We're seeing the ministry actually consider increased speed limits. Of course, we know the 402 is 110, but that one, I've heard they've also had some preliminary talks about some secondary highways going to 90. Part of the reason for that is when these were built, you probably remember back when we had miles per hour, these were set up for an appropriate miles per hour that would be equivalent to 90 km/h. So we set those speed limits appropriate, and those roads where the 90s are posted have been designed well in excess of that, designed to 110 or 120 km/h. So the sight lines and those types of things are safe for that speed limit, but that doesn't preclude us from having the discussion. Certainly a valid one to have, and we can look at that in more detail with a future report. Again, like these speed limit changes that we have in this report are sort of more of an informal review, but we could certainly, staff would be happy to do a formal review of speed limits just generally across the whole county. And it probably would be worthwhile to do at some point. The other one is speed limits at intersections. And I can tell you that what we're seeing at these high speed intersections, the types of collisions aren't generally being caused by people traveling at 90 km/h when they hit that stop sign. Generally, they're slowing down to the point where, and unfortunately, it is the safer intersections when you look at them strictly in a sightline point of view, where people take a chance, look both ways, don't see a vehicle, and then blow through the stop sign. And that's why we're having serious collisions, and we've seen evidence of that. And I'm sure we'll talk about it during the correspondence items, which is why we're looking at these enhanced rumble strip type of installations in order to make sure that people aren't inadvertently blowing the stop sign. But certainly we can look in a more general, holistic sort of way at speed limits across our whole geographic area, and we can include those intersection type of reviews as well at that point in time.
Just a follow up, if I could, Madam Warden. And I guess it's not really the speed limit so much. I guess I use those as possibilities. It's the intersections and the distracted driving and the fact that these accidents are happening when they really do not have to happen. What is it we can do to make these intersections as safe as possible and still have people have quality of life? Like I hear when these rumble strips, when you're living right next door to one, I get it. So I understand that, but I also understand the need for safety. So what is it that we're missing? What is it we can do in order to make this work all the way around?
To the word of Councillor Vanderheyden, that's the $1 million question. Engineers have been struggling with this forever, since cars were on the road. So it's not there's no magic bullet to it. There's certainly different things that we've tried, and of course we have to balance cost with safety and efficiency of our roads. You know, we famously, my predecessor would say, if safety was paramount, all our roads would be 30 kilometers per hour. We'd have a 4-way stop at every intersection, but that would be at a complete sacrifice of the efficiency of our road network. So we have to balance those types of things. Again, a roundabout at every intersection might be something that people would suggest to me would help eliminate these problems, but we certainly can't afford that as a county or as a municipality. And I don't think that's a reasonable expense of tax dollars to undertake those types of significant improvements. So again, we have to look at everything that's out there. And the enhanced rumble strips and even our older type of rumble strips have really helped over the years to eliminate a lot of those distracted blow through stop sign types of collisions. We haven't had any reported collisions at these intersections where the enhanced rumble strips are now at those 3 locations. And we're certainly looking at changing the patterns in the future for all of our installations for rumble strips, because these seem to be more effective. Of course, we're modifying some of that. We're listening to the local concerns. They have been heard, and we have addressed some of those concerns already. Are going to continue to monitor these pilot locations to move forward. We're also looking at other things like the LED lights around stop signs that they're piloting in Huron County. They're not without their challenges. They're certainly not the cure-all for their problems either, but we're watching for those and we're keeping our eye on those types of things. And you know, thank goodness for organizations like OGRA and MEA and those other AMO, other areas where resources are being dedicated to some of these types of things. And we certainly look at those with interest. And we have a toolbox. We use the tools where they're appropriate. And again, like I say, certainly happy to come back to the table with a more sort of overall look at speed limits and their effect on safety, and sometimes their negative effect on safety.
Any other comments, questions on the speed limit bylaw update? Councillor Warwick.
Yeah, thank you. And I just a quick thank you to Chris for being responsive to the request from the people in Mossley regarding that speed change. It's something that's been very important to them, and they've been watching closely. So I know it would be very well appreciated. And again, thank you for taking care of that.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, we do have a motion in front of you, so I would ask for a mover and seconder for that. One way that Councillor Warwick, and a seconder, Councillor Brennan. And all opposed? And that's carried. Okay, moving on to correspondence and information items. Strathmere Lodge Occupancy and Activity Report, September 2020. Okay, review of the county official plan for compliance with provincial changes. Letter from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing advising that the government's commitment to freeze residential rent increases in 2021 received royal assent on October 1st, 2020. Councillor Vander Hayden, do you have your hand up?
Yes, please. I read that with interest because I think there's a lot of people that need help out there, but I also want to highlight that I also have spoken to a lot of landowners who are starting to struggle because they're not getting rent payments, and the tribunal's not meeting often enough, and it just seems to be a real mess out there of how this COVID response is helping people, and we're forgetting that it's all people, not just some people. And I just wanted to just say that that's not really a debate for today, but it's one of those things that I'm getting from all different sides, and it's interesting what things are being dealt with and how they're being dealt with.
I think it just only highlights the conversations that we have been having over the last few months about housing and just the impacts on everybody, whether those in need or those providing or those that can't provide, or it's a full circle, that's for sure. Okay, moving on, AMO update entitled Modified Stage 2 Restrictions for High-Risk Areas, Caution for Rest of Province and Support for Small Businesses, dated October 9th, 2020. Councillor Vander Hayden.
All right, just wanted to reply to this. I just want to encourage everyone to stay as patient as possible because there's so many changes happening and this is so fluid. Every single day we seem to be getting things, and I know that citizens are getting frustrated. I know that all of our staff have so many things that they have to deal with our recreation facilities and all the different things that we have to take care of because we want to make sure that our residents are safe. And yet we need to reply and pay attention to all the rules and regulations that are coming down from the health units, from the professionals that are dealing with the COVID response. And I know that we all had a meeting last week on that the medical officer of health put on last week, Friday, regarding the changes that were coming from the province and the things that they're putting in place in London, Middlesex. And I know there's some confusion out there. So I just want to reply that, you know, we all need to keep going to not just to AMO, but to our local websites to find out what the regulations are and how they affect us, because frustration doesn't get us anywhere. And we all have to be a little bit patient to figure out how to get there. And I know patience seems to be running a little bit thin because people are frustrated and fearful. So again, not sure what else I can say to that, but I really just thought that was something that I needed to say.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And as always, wash your hands. If you're sick, don't go to work. Physical distance and wear your mask. I mean, not much more besides that. Councillor DeVete.
If I may, through you to council, I just want to remind everyone that there's on the Middlesex London Health Unit, there's a page that summarizes everything in detail regularly as the news comes out. And it's really hard to keep up to what the news is saying and who's saying what, but if you're ever in doubt, I find it's a good place to check and see what the current state of the nation is. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for that reminder. Okay. Move on then. AMO update entitled Ontario proposes new blue box regulations, modified stage 2 restrictions expanded to York region, and Halloween guidance dated October 19th, 2020. Councillor Vanderheyden.
Thank you. I'm not going to talk about Halloween. I'm not going to talk about modified stage 2, but I'd like to have some kind of confirmation about the new blue box regulations and how that will affect. Of course, it doesn't affect the county. It affects the municipalities that belong to the county, because we at the lower tier are responsible for collection. And I know that Councillor Richards sits on the Blue Water facility board. He's actually the chair. And how will that affect that organization? Because that organization does most, if not all, of the pickup in the county, how those new regulations are going to affect it. So I don't know whether we need to report on that at our local levels, or whether that's something that we can do as a group, or what everybody else is thinking.
I'll hand it over to Councillor Richards in a sec. I know I'll speak for Luke and Badolf that we are going to have the CAO president, Francis, come to our local council to discuss, the future and what it means. So that's what we're doing at the local level. But Councillor Richards, you might have something to
Thank you, Warden.
add.
We just discussed that last week at our monthly meeting. And Francis is just waiting for a couple more clarifications on the guidelines that are out now. And then he is going to be coming around to all the municipalities to talk about that. Because we're fully automated now. The whole area for the Blue Water areas is fully automated now, because Adelaide Metcalf is on board with us, which is great. The changeover for us to the producer paying thing is going to be April of 2024. So we got a little bit of time to lead up to that. We'll be the second phase group that will go into this new production. So between now and then, we have to get ready for it, basically. But it's certainly looking good. We can produce the recycled products cheaper than anyone else. We have the best collection of anybody around. So I don't see the producers making a lot of changes anyways, but that's still yet to be figured on their behalf. So we'll be meeting with them quite often over the next little while. But in the short term, once Francis gets all the guidelines in place, then he's going to be coming around to all the municipalities. So be prepared probably between now and January, February, probably.
Okay. All right. You're good with that, Councillor Vanderheyden? Okay. Moving on to the letter from Middlesex London Health Unit. Enclosed is the monthly Board of Health update for September 2020. Letter from Mark Studeni, representing a group of concerned residents with respect to the rumble strips on Ilderton Road by the intersection of Nairn Road. And I know that there was a number of comments that referred to this earlier in the meeting. And I don't know if Councillor Smith, if you wanted to add anything to this, and then we'll maybe entertain some comments from council, and then I'll hand it over to Chris.
Excellent. Through the warden, just a couple of comments. Personally, I've never actually drove through this intersection with the enhanced rumble strips, but I have gone through the intersection on Melbourne Road in Glendon. And as somebody that travels down the road, I am a big supporter of those rumble strips. I think they do an excellent job. They remind people that there's a stop sign ahead. They're very, they're intense. They're not like your, little rumble strip that you kind of forget about after a while. It's, it's right there. As a local resident, and after also reading that other email that Councillor Vanderheyden and myself, and I believe Councillor Mayhew received, and thinking about, the local residents, I can understand why they're feeling frustrated and annoyed by these extra noises. Myself, and I know it's not, the same, but I live down the road from a bridge which didn't make noise. And then the council today decided to change it to a graded steel top. And now I deal with a noise of a bridge every time somebody drives over the bridge. Bridges shouldn't make noises. Intersections shouldn't typically make noises, but also you should, people should know that there are going to be rumble strips. So it's not something unheard of that if you live near a large intersection that you'll hear those noises, but understanding how loud they are and, hearing it inside people's houses, I'm sure it is very frustrating. So knowing all that information, but also personally knowing that it's a better way of making sure people know, there's a stop sign ahead. I'm not sure where we should go from here. As Chris alluded to, there are other options. And I know last year I brought forward a notice of motion asking for different safety measures for intersections, for county intersections. So maybe we need to look at some different options. But as I said before, I'm a big supporter of the enhanced rumble strips. We just need to figure out what works where, because in different intersections, there are, some, heavily dense residential areas. So we'll have to figure something out. But I'm at the end of the day, I'm happy with the rumble strips. It's just we need to find something better, especially in those areas where it is getting noisy inside those homes.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Smith. Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Ropp.
Thank you. Through the warden, I do echo Councillor Smith's comments. The one thing I would like to add, Chris, have they been up long enough for us to start to get any results on the impact of, from a safety standpoint, on these rumble strips?
Yeah, through the warden, I just, maybe if any other councillors have comments first, I have a few sort of high level things I'll talk about: effectiveness, noise, things like that. It's, if there's anything I haven't missed, I just maybe assemble a list first and I can go back to Councillor Ropp and Councillor Smith with their questions.
Okay, that'd be fine. Thanks.
Do you have anything else to add, Councillor Ropp?
No, that's the part of the equation I'd like to hear from.
Okay. Yep. Other comments from Councillor Vanderheyden?
I think I've said enough on the actual topic, but when Chris is all done, then I would like to have a commitment that Councillor Mayhew and myself and Mr. Trainee will meet to discuss this at maybe even the intersection, so we can see what it is that's, because I think when we get complaints and concerns, we do need to look at them, and Councillor Smith is absolutely right. Every intersection is a little bit different. So what can we do to work this through? So I just want that commitment so we can get that done and we can work for our citizens that way.
Any other comments to add for Chris to consider? All right, seeing none at this moment, I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Warden. I'm just going to go through just a few things about, now, just so council knows, there's 3 intersections in particular where the county was receiving, first of all, receiving a number of complaints from residents about people running the stop sign. So the 3 intersections are the one Mr. Studeni references, which is Ilderton and Nairn. One is Center Road and Nairn, which is in North Middlesex. And the other one is at Melbourne and Glendon Drive, where we both had the residents complain about the concern with intersection safety. And we had a number of fatalities at that intersection. It's been a challenging intersection. Off the bat, I'll say all 3 of those intersections, if you look at them purely in an engineering perspective about sight lines, speed limits, size of the stop signs, all those types of things, they far exceed what would be prescribed as the minimum safety standards in any sort of engineering guideline. So, they're great, clear sight distances in all directions. The stop signs were in good shape. There were rumble strips at these intersections previously. So all of these intersections would have met our safety standards. So then it becomes a kind of a question, harkening back to Councillor Vanderheyden and our speed limit discussion. What do we do? What's in our toolbox? What can we use? So if the question is that the problem that was determined was that people were missing the stop sign. So if the challenge is people are missing the stop sign, how do we make sure people don't miss the stop sign? And as much as I'd love to put a flashing light or an LED ring around a stop sign, if your face is down in a phone, even if I'm standing in front of you waving my arms, if there's no noise or sound or physical effect on the driver, they're not going to see that stop sign. And we've got great evidence that rumble strips have worked in the past. So we were looking at sort of the newer science around rumble strips, and we found this enhanced rumble strip layout. So what it is, those of you who don't know or haven't driven over them, there's a set of rumble strips ahead of the stop ahead sign, and then a set of rumble strips ahead of the stop sign. And there's a break, a physical break between the 2 sets of rumble strips, so that you have a chance to see the stop ahead sign and correct your speed, and then you have a chance again to see the stop sign and correct your speed. So certainly there's 2 unique sensations to the driver, and the science is that even if the first one has no effect, if it wakes you up, you thought you just hit something inadvertently, you're going to see the second one. It's going to bring you to an alert state where you can actually stop in time to make a complete stop at the stop sign. Again, it's not going to stop those individuals who roll through the stop sign or go through the stop sign at full speed because they can see so well in every direction. But again, it's going to stop or eliminate the collisions that were being communicated to us, and some evidence of which was people were blowing the stop sign. And the good news is, so far, to address Councillor Opp's question, is we have not had collisions at those intersections since the new rumble strips have been installed. Not that I'm aware of, unless they've happened in the last couple of days. I haven't seen anything come through. I'm mindful that COVID has affected traffic volumes. In my conversation with the City of London, we're seeing volumes down 12 to 20%. So there may be some reciprocal effect of that as well on our safety right now in a positive way. But let's talk a little bit about the 2 ones where we're hearing concerns, and I want to make sure that council understands that the concerns are being heard. So in Southwest Middlesex, Strathroy, Caradoc, we did receive those emails. We did respond, and if I didn't respond, include Councillor Vanderheyden and Councillor Richards, I apologize, but I certainly responded to Councillor Mayhew to talk to those residents about their concerns. And certainly there where we were playing a little bit of a wait and see, the intent is when we mill in a rumble strip, they do wear down. And we're hoping to see those wear down significantly over the summer and the winter. They have worn down. Anybody who drove over them the first week, I would 100% agree. Very aggressive, very noisy. Those have worn down. We went as far as having a public meeting, and Councillor DeVitt can comment on that. She was present at the public meeting in Middlesex Centre with Mr. Studeni and many of the people mentioned in this letter. We took some actions prior to the meeting and have taken some actions after that meeting that have met with some positive results. So for example, the cyclists that are mentioned, we actually didn't realize the negative impact this would have. The rumble strips go across the whole width of the pavement, so cyclists have nowhere to get through a sort of a smooth area of asphalt. We paved the edge of the road back in, so we've actually put some expenditure in, paved the edge of the road back in, and I actually got a couple of emails from cyclists saying thank you for that, and they can traverse those rumble strips safely at this point. We're looking at doing that again down in near on Melbourne Road and on Nairn Road, but we're not hearing those complaints from cyclists, but we will address those. Wanted to try it over in Ilderton Road first. We actually just recently installed sort of a rubber, almost like a tack coat to the bottom of the rumble strips. Unfortunately, the day the contractor put it in, he didn't put it into specs. We had a little bit of tackiness to that where it's tracking on some vehicles. We've dealt with that. But again, that has also helped to deaden the sound on those rumble strips somewhat. And we have audio decibel measurements of those. I would say neither of them, before or after, would be anything that would, the Ministry of the Environment guidelines would trigger that these are excessively noisy to the point where they would be something where we would be in contravention of any kind of a noise guideline from the ministry's point of view. And we're going to continue to monitor. I mean, this is not a one and done issue. We're going to continue and monitor these. We have heard other concerns from these residents, and certainly would be happy to do some of these other things with the other rumble strips in these other locations. But again, I hear many of the same things that have been brought up today. People are positive on them in the fact that they understand the benefit of the rumble strips. And I've heard from some of the residents they would much rather have a nuisance noise than hear an ambulance siren attending a serious collision at one of these intersections. There's some alternatives here. We are looking at traffic counts again. You'll see in our traffic signal warrant report that's going to be coming your way in the next couple of months. Our staff are out at Ilderton Road and Nairn Road to see what the traffic volumes are like there. If it would warrant a traffic signal, again, it's something we can look at. The traffic volumes just aren't there for that. I'm trying to remember what else they had asked for us here. Again, flashing lights, don't agree to the benefit of those. We've removed the flashing lights at our intersections. We've seen a general drop because we've removed the confusion that many drivers have. We had, unfortunately, had incidents with serious injuries and fatalities where people assumed a flashing light meant a four-way stop. That's not the case. But if you consider it to be a four-way stop, then we have a challenge and we have a problem there, and it's not an easy one to solve. So we removed those, and we've seen a positive benefit to the removal of the flashing lights. We're watching the pilot program in Huron County closely. They've had some challenges. We're hoping to see their final report. I'm told it's supposed to be by the end of this year. I speak with their county engineer regularly, and we'll see what comes out of that report. Again, if it's something we can use and it's effective, something you'll see me support. And I think council knows that I'm a proponent for road safety and can support those things. And then building roundabouts. We certainly hear that a lot. We are undertaking a design for our first roundabout. We're going to start construction next year at Glendon Drive and Van Eck Road. But we're talking about factors of traffic here. Roundabouts are mainly a traffic efficiency tool. And we're talking about one of the busiest, Glendon Drive is one of the busiest roads in the county. So we're talking about moving traffic through an area. As a road safety measure, sure, they can reduce fatalities, but I have seen issues at low volume intersections where people have driven through these roundabouts and been hurt or been killed. And they're very expensive. Council's heard me talk about this in the past. It can be $2 million, $3 million, lots of land purchase that we would have to do in many of these locations, and certainly a very intensive type of installation. So we need to use the same tools we use for deciding where we put in traffic signals for roundabouts. Certainly would be challenged to say any of these three intersections would warrant a roundabout at this point in time. But again, we're not done at any of these. We're going to continue to look at them. I'm hopeful over the winter we'll see again a continued wear down of some of these rumble strips. Again, happy to meet with the public. We've done it once already, and Councillor Vanderheyden and Councillor Mayhew, if we wanted to have some kind of a public meeting, be happy to do that. Talk to residents down at the intersection of Melbourne and Glendon Drive. And fortunately at Nairn and Center Road, we don't have residents in that area, and they've been very effective up there. I think that if anything really positive can be said, that intersection has been challenging to us in North Middlesex. And we've had other suggestions, but I certainly have not heard complaints about safety since those rumble strips have gone in up that way. And I think people are generally happy with the result. And we're happy with the result on a safety perspective. But I think I'll leave it there, Madam Ward. Just I think I've sort of said some of the things we're doing and we're continuing to do and monitor. And certainly these are not one and done, and we're not sort of closing our eyes and plugging our ears to the public's concerns. We understand there's a nuisance that they're struggling with at this point, and we're going to do what we can, again, to help create what we can balance between, road safety and these nuisance issues.
Well, thank you very much for that update, Chris. I just have a couple things on this. With regards to this, whatever you put in the strips just a while back, I'm assuming that was before October 19th when Mr. Studeni sent this. So that was before. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I have to say that I was over those rumble strips at the beginning, and I know I've been over them now since whatever you've put in there, because I did notice a difference. There was a slight dulling. So I will agree with that you said. And I just wonder if maybe, you said you're going to continue to monitor, and we don't know what sort of winter is going to be ahead of us, but rather than wait until spring, could you maybe come back maybe the end of January, kind of beginning of February, just with an interim report on what you're seeing, just so that we don't lose that kind of discussion, and that the residents know that it is, still top of mind to us? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Madam Ward, and certainly come back to you with some statistics that gives us a bigger window. I would note that, sorry, that was incorrect. Mr. Studeni, actually, his letter came after that application had been made. His claim is they're as noisy as ever. Our evidence is there, it has helped. So again, we have some measurements of that. So anyways, definitely we'll be back to talk to council, early 2021, and then again in the spring, and however long it takes to get through this issue, and hopefully we find a great solution.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. If there's nothing else, then I'll move on. A budget variance report to September 30th, 2020, and COVID-19 impacts from Cindy. Cindy, is there anything you wanted to highlight in particular?
Thanks, through the warden. Yes, I did want to highlight a couple things. At this time, the county has been able to fund the pressures of COVID-19 from a combination of new provincial funding sources and county cost containment strategies. Land Ambulance did apply to the Ministry of Health for COVID-19 costs, but no response has been received to date. But we have been communicating back and forth, and we're hopeful we'll hear a response soon. The county will use Phase 1 Safe Restart funding to cover any COVID-19 related 2020 costs and operating deficits if we have any. And the remaining funds will be brought forward to cover January 1st to March 31st, 2021 COVID-19 costs. I'm recommending that the county not apply for Phase 2 of the Safe Restart Agreement Fund. Thanks, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Cindy. Any questions on that? Okay, I don't think I see anything, so I would ask for a motion to receive those reports for information. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Mayhew and Councillor Elliott. And all opposed? And that's carried. So any inquiries? Councillor Smith.
Madam Warden, it's not an inquiry. I'm just wondering, just so then we have the motion or something in our minutes, or maybe our acting clerk is going to do that, but maybe just to address that item number 7, to say that the county engineer will be reporting back in the future, just so we have a motion in the
Sure.
minutes.
Okay, we can do that. Did you want to make that motion, Councillor Smith?
I would love to. I'll let the acting clerk wordsmith it.
Perfect. It's a great thing now that these meetings are taped because we can go back and get the feeling. Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Mayhew. All opposed? And that's carried. Perfect. Let's make a note of that myself. Okay, moving on to new business. You've got the list of council dates in front of you. And maybe I'll just ask Bill to speak about the November 10th meeting. I know that he sent out an email to all of us earlier about how warden nominations might work this year.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I think like all things 2020, we are making some adjustments. And one of the real-time adjustments we're making is just to how the inaugural work. I was trying to ascertain whether we would have a lot of nominations for warden or not an easy task to do, but I'm thinking that we will come back to you on the first meeting in November with an update to the process that might allow us, if there is only one nomination, to move forward at the second meeting in November without having an inaugural meeting. So we're just working towards that. I hope to have Wayne and Kathy and a bunch of us are working on getting that language right. And it would provide you with that option, because the moment I sent that email out to you about what the process might be, I had a number of questions pop up in my inbox about would it be possible if there is only one nomination to do it a different way? It is possible, but only with some modification to our procedural bylaw. So that's what we're going to present to you at the November meeting, and we'll go from there. So at least that way you have it as an option if that's what happens. Because I think if we can avoid having a meeting in December that isn't necessary, then that's great. And if we do need one, then we'll do that as well. So we have that option for council.
Great, thank you for that update. And we do have to go into closed session with to talk in order to consider labor relations or employee negotiations. So I would ask for a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Vanderheyden, a seconder. Councillor Warwick. All opposed? And that is carried. I'll just